You are understanding that desire is the summoning point of life. Therefore, if contrast is the summoning point of desire, then contrast must be a good thing, yes? You've reached the place where those things that you desire that have not yet manifested still please you? The answer is yes, yes. And especially those things that you've wanted and wanted and wanted and wanted that are not yet here. You're happy about that too, yes? We know we're pushing it, but you know, there should be nothing that you have wanted and wanted and wanted and wanted and wanted. Because when you ask, it is given. So we are not really here as teachers. We are not really here as teachers of patience. We are here as teachers of aligning with your desire. And when you do align with your desire, then things come into manifestation for you very quickly. You know how it works? When you ask, it is always given. So what causes you to ask? Contrast, something you're living, gives birth to a preference. You could call it a preference. You could call it a full-blown desire. But whether you speak your words about it or not, what you're living causes you to ask. And you do not ask with your words, because there are many species among you in your flora and fauna kingdoms who do not use language the way you do, but they continue to ask. And when they ask, like you, it is always given. In fact, when you live something that causes you to ask, no matter how grand it seems on the scale of things desired, or how simple, when you ask, Source Energy, who is so aware of who you are, joins you in your request immediately. But when Source asks for something, Source becomes so completely at one with the vibration of the desire that there is no vibrational discord between the desire of Source and the receiving of it. So when your contrast causes you, or your variety, your well-stocked kitchen causes you to ask for something, in the moment of your asking, Source immediately focuses upon that which you've asked for and becomes an immediate and perfect vibrational match with what you are asking for. So a very important thing happened there. 1 point of vibrational relativity in a 2-point system that we're going to tell you about has been established. In other words, in the moment that you ask, Source becomes completely in agreement with what you're asking for. So then the only question is, how are you doing with your attitude, with your beliefs, with your mood, with your point of focus relative to what you're asking for? Jerry and Esther have navigational systems in their vehicles that work on the same principle as your guidance system. They have a computer in the vehicle, and there are satellites out there in the sky, and it is known by the system at all times where they are. So they program in their desired destination, and then Magellan or Pioneer or OnStar, they have 3 different systems in 3 different vehicles, now calculates the route between where they are and where they now want to go, and then gives them verbal and visual description so that they can get onto the highlighted path. The process is magnificent because it is so simple in nature. It only has to consider 2 things: where they are in relationship to where they want to be. And when they get off track, Magellan kicks up a squawk. Please proceed to the highlighted route. Please proceed to the highlighted route. It's very easy to know when you're not on the highlighted route. Sometimes Magellan says, when possible, make a legal U-turn. In other words, not only are you not on your route, but you're all going in the opposite direction of that which you have intended. You have a guidance system within you that operates on the same principle. Your emotions let you know when you are moving towards something that you want, or when you are moving in opposite direction of something that you want. So the contrast caused you to desire it, and Source became immediately one with it. That's 1 point of the 2 points of vibrational relativity. But where you are in terms of your mood, attitude, or belief is the other point. So let's say you go to your mailbox, you get your mail. There are several invoices from several different people asking for money from you. And while you always like to keep your word, you have somehow gotten carried away with your credit cards, and there is more that is being asked for than you can comfortably or maybe even possibly pay. And in that moment of concern, maybe even fear or aggravation or awareness, in that moment, you launch a rocket of desire that says, I want a stronger, steadier, fuller, broader, bigger, better flow of dollars into my experience. Whether you say it or not, it happened during that moment. And Source immediately said, agreed, consider it done. As Source rushes instantly to maintain its perfect place as one point of vibrational relativity. But then you go into your desk and you open your bills and you look at your bill and you complain, I must be out of my mind, or my wife is out of her mind, or this credit card company is overcharging me, or it should not have cost this much for my car repair. And as you beat the drum that says, I don't have enough money, you are not in vibrational alignment with what you have asked for and what Source is in agreement with. And the thing that we so much want you to hear is that if you could find a way, and we'll show you today over and over again, if you could find a way how to take the emotional journey from worrying about not having enough money to being hopeful or even expectant that more money would come, you could in 5 minutes or less join your Source and your desire, and you could begin sending one singular signal from you about money. And when you do that, because now you're only sending one clear signal, universal forces will provide immediate circumstances and events in order to accommodate the more money that you are wanting. Now, the reason that you don't know how fast it will work is because you rarely align with what you want. And the reason that you rarely align with what you want is because the contrast that you're focused upon has a vibrational attitude. And while it gave birth to a rocket of desire, it's not your normal attitude or mood about this subject. You've been beating the drum or practicing the vibration of not having enough money longer than you've been launching this rocket of desire that says you want more money. And you're just not up to speed with your new desire, but you could be very quickly. So what we want you to understand is that if you could disregard what is right now, disregard how little money you have in your bank account, or disregard the pain you have in your body, or disregard the extra pounds you're carrying around that you don't want, or disregard the things in your life that are not pleasing you. If you could disregard them, which means give your attention to something that vibrates in a better feeling place, you could clean up your vibration almost immediately. But you have been trained, so many of you, to be such objective observers of what is. You want so much to tell the truth. And we say, there are a lot of truths that we think you'd like to line up with, and there are a lot of truths that you don't want to line up with. Don't let your criteria for talking about it and beating the drum of it and activating it in your vibration, don't let that criteria be whether it's true or not. Anything's true that anybody focuses on for very long. Just because somebody is focused upon something that they don't want long enough that they've activated in their vibration long enough that they've gone there does not mean that you need to do that also. In other words, you are the creator of your own reality, and you create your reality by giving attention to things which activate vibrations which law of attraction responds to. So, as you are understanding that there is a big difference between getting the circumstances to change so that you can have a better feeling response to the circumstance, and taking an emotional journey that makes you feel better even though the circumstance hasn't changed, now you know the key to going anywhere from where you are. We'll play that back to you in another way. If you say, I don't have enough money, and I would feel a lot better when I have a lot more money, but the circumstances have to change to give me a lot more money so that I can feel better about having a lot more money, so then I can be a vibrational match to having a lot more money, you can't get there from there. But if you can say, I can feel better about money where I am, and I can bring myself from worry to hopeful to believing just by talking myself up the emotional scale, then you have closed the vibrational gap between where you are and where you want to be relative to money. And now the money that you're asking for, or the physical condition that you're asking for, or the relation that you're asking for must come. So what rockets of desires are launched from the contrasting experience. That's what life is, isn't it? A series of experiences. Esther and Jerry want this to be perfect sound, and it isn't for some reason, some questionable unknown. So they're standing in a contrasting place where a rocket of desire is born, And source energy immediately goes with that rocket of desire and says, done. So Jerry and Esther cannot complain about trouble with the sound system and find a solution. They can't complain about fragile microphones that cost $2,000 and solve anything. In other words, you have to make peace with where you are. You have to say, an occasional pop in the sound system is not the end of the world. No one was very upset. It was rather infrequent. Doesn't happen all that often. If it happens, we can deal with it. We'll figure it out later. We'll make our way. We can easily replace our equipment. We can figure out what it is. Not a big issue. All is well with us. We can continue the seminar as is. No reason for us to get out of vibrational whack over something so insignificant. In other words, that's taking the emotional journey. Now, the action journey would be getting out all the cords, tearing the equipment all apart, asking you all to leave the room, finding some new way of going about it. In other words, there is the action journey, which sometimes you can resolve things fairly quickly. But what we're encouraging is that you always let the emotional journey be your first line of defense, the first thing that comes to your mind. Because when you take the time to take an emotional journey, now here's what we mean by this. We're visiting with a woman one day who said, Abraham, I have arthritis in my hips. It is very painful. Even when I lie down, I'm in pain. How can I imagine a good feeling body when the body I have is hurting me so often? And we said, we know it is not easy, but still it is your work. You have to find a way of separating the physical discomfort, which is the action, and the emotional response to the physical discomfort. Because if you can separate those two, she said, what do you mean? Because it felt the same to her. I hurt. That feels emotional. And we said, think about it. You could be in physical pain and be afraid of what that means and where it's going. Or you could be in physical pain and be hopeful about improvement. And the vibrational difference between fear and hope is the vibrational difference between recovery and not. Are you hearing us? So what we want you to leave this gathering understanding more fully than ever before, and there's no reason that you can't leave here really, really, really knowing this, is that the way you feel about what you're giving your attention to is all that really matters. And you have absolute control eventually about the way you feel about anything. But we put that word eventually in there very carefully because you don't have control about how you feel necessarily this red hot minute, in the sense that you can't jump from despair into bliss immediately. The vibrational frequencies are too far apart, any more than you could set your radio dial on 6:30 a.m. and hear what's being broadcast on 98.7 FM. The frequencies have to match up. So if you've been living something that has you in this place of really feeling uncomfortable, you can't jump all the way into something that feels comfortable. You have to move yourself incrementally. So you can move to something that feels a little better, and then you can move to something that feels a little better, and then you can move something that feels a little better. It's sort of like, have you ever had a radio station that you were really wanting to hear, and there was another big booming tower somewhere nearby that was sort of overshadowing your tiny little station? And so you had to set your tuner very, very precisely, but every now and again, the larger frequency would still override, sort of bleed into the system. Well, analogies are never perfect, but it is similar to that, the way the frequencies relative to law of attraction. In other words, you could be in despair, and you would not have access to a feeling of frustration from despair, but you would have access to a feeling of revenge from despair. See what we're getting at? The vibrational frequency of revenge is close enough to the vibrational frequency of despair that if you reach and try, you can hear it. And when you get hold of a thought that feels like revenge, don't listen to your family, because they liked you better when you were depressed. When you're depressed, you stay in your room and you don't bother anybody. And now you've got this revenge thing going. You're going to cause trouble, and they know it. But if we were coaching you and you were in despair, we would really, really encourage anything that would lead you from despair.